Well, hello everybody. This is Ron Brown. To many of you, it's Dr. Ronald Brown. But I'm going to be giving you a site visit to a Catholic church. Now, the topic of this program today is the exploring, discovering, explaining world religions. Now, we are standing in front of, as you can see on the sign, St. Adalbert Parish, which is a bit over 100 years old. We are in the Elmhurst area of Queens. And what I'm going to be doing today is describing what I call the universal building blocks of religion. What unites all religions? Even though, as we all know, religions are very different, they go to war and everything else, but there's certain elements that we have to understand to explain what is a religion. What unites all religions, but yet they can also divide religions. Now, as I describe religions, I like to use the analogy of a tree. Take this tree over here, put the tree down the street. Religions began probably millions of years ago when the first humans started becoming aware that thunder and lightning and death and life and birth and all of those were major issues and started asking questions. They started giving answers. Where do we come from? Where do we go when we die? Why are we here? Why does the thunder and lightning strike here and not someplace else? And so our cave-dwelling ancestors started elaborating theories. And from these theories, all of the religions which we have today emerged like a tree. So you think of the roots of the tree are the cave-dwelling ancestors, and each branch is another world religion. One is Judaism, one is Islam, one is Buddhism, one is Confucianism, one is the Mormons, another one is Seventh-day Adventists, and one is Catholic. So they all have a similar root, and they all have a similar origin. Okay, so sharing a common origin, a common root. All of the religions of the world have certain building blocks. So you can take any religion and you can break it down into its fundamental building blocks. And these building blocks are shared across all religions. Now, right now we are standing in front of St. Adalbert's Parish. You can see founded in 1892 in Elmhurst, Queens. Well, if you look at the building, it's neo-Gothic architecture, the same as St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York, the same as Notre Dame in Paris, a glory of European architecture. Well, if you look closely, what is that building? It's a recreation of a mountain. Now, if you look at a Hindu temple in India, or the Hindu temple of Ganesha in Flushing, Queens, it is a recreation of a mountain. So mountains are one of those universal building blocks of all religions. Every religion is fascinated, fixated on mountains. Now don't forget, where did Moses go to get the Ten Commandments? Up to Mount Sinai. Where was Jesus crucified? On a mount. The most sacred mountain of Judaism is Mount Zion. So every religion has a mountain. The Greeks had Mount Olympus. So the gods lived in mountains. They don't live in caves. They don't live in valleys. They don't live in flat plains. Mountains are one of those universal building blocks of religion. So that is why this church points upward, because one of the fundamental building blocks of religion is God is up there somewhere. Heaven is up there. Hell is down here. So Gothic architecture points upward. The dome of a mosque, the minaret, the towers on each side of each mosque point upward to where God lives. So a mountain is one of those universal building blocks of all religions. Now, we're going to cross the street and hopefully not get run over. And we're going to see some other universal building blocks of religion. Now, if you look above the door, you can see it's written in Verite adoremus pax et bonum. In truth, we are worship, peace, and good. Well, it is in Latin. Now, why would you put a modern Catholic church in Flushing, Queens? Why would you put an inscription on Latin? Well, once again, sacred language is a building block of all religions. Go to a Hindu temple, it is going to be in Sanskrit. Nobody speaks Sanskrit anymore, but it is the sacred language. Jews worship in Hebrew. Even if they don't speak a word of Hebrew, they have to say their prayers in Hebrew. You go to a mosque, the sacred language of Arabic. The Quran even says God chose to make his revelation in the pure Arabic language. So every religion has some kind of a sacred language. Even Protestants, who translated everything into German or English or French, rediscovered the importance of sacred language when Pentecostal Christians started speaking in tongues. Even in normal conversation, special words, strange languages have power. We say abracadabra, open sesame. Nobody knows what those mean, but they have a certain power. So architecture, mountains, very important. Sacred language, Latin, another very important building block of religion. Now, a totally different aside, not a fundamental building block, but every religion has to adapt to the modern age. If we look over here at the left of the entrance, we see 1947. All the soldiers were coming home from World War II. They married their sweethearts and they moved into suburban neighborhoods like Elmhurst, like the many towns in Long Island, and they built their churches. You can see there's a school nearby. There's a house for the nuns and the priests nearby. So this was a flowering of the Catholic Church after World War II. Levittown had its churches, its Catholic schools, it had its Catholic everything. So every church has to adapt. Well, how does it adapt? It takes the ancient universal building blocks of religion, it updates them, it modernizes them. Some it rediscovers, some it suppresses. This one rediscovered the power of the mountain. It rediscovered the power of sacred languages. So, another aspect of our mountain is, if you look at the entrance, you always go up steps. It's like a pilgrimage, entering a house of worship, whether it's a synagogue, a temple, or whatever, is a pilgrimage. And so you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 steps, a plateau. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 steps. Again, you are going up the mountain, you enter the door, and there you see the interior of the house of worship. Once again, this is very similar. It could be a mosque, it could be a synagogue, it could be a Hindu temple, it could be a Buddhist temple. Now, one thing that I will point out before we go in is Catholics love statues. You can see over here on the right, there's a statue of St. Maximin Kolbe. In the middle, there is a statue of Mary. And you see statues down the street. There's Mary, there's St. Francis. Once again, art is part of a house of worship. House of worships are to be beautiful. They are to be a throne where you venerate or worship your particular god or gods. These are representations of the sacred people of the Catholic Church, of the Christian Church. So this magnificent building here was really the crowning achievement of the neighborhood. If we look up the street here, we see some rather ordinary family homes, nothing elegant. On the other side of the street, the same thing. This was not a wealthy neighborhood, but the people put every penny they could to beautifying their neighborhood with a magnificent church. And this is very typical of every religious group. You want your house of worship to be a beautiful monument to your people, to your God, to your community, in the middle of a neighborhood. So, let's go in the front door. Okay, so we are now inside the church. Now, every Catholic church, as soon as you walk in the door, has what we call here a holy water font. Now, today this is covered over because we have the pandemic lockdown, so they don't want people sharing water and that. But normally this would be open and there would be holy water in there. Someone would come in, they would take the holy water, make the sign of the cross, and then they would go in. Now, most Catholics never think much about this. Most Christians wouldn't. But we're dealing here with another very important universal building block of all religions, and that is water. Think Jesus being baptized by John the Baptist in the River Jordan. Think Muslims washing their hands, their feet, and their face before they say their prayers. Think the mikvah, the Jewish ritual bath before they have any religious functions. Water, purification. Think a baby being baptized by pouring water. Think Protestants taking a person into the river, dunking them 3 times. Water is powerful, a universal symbol. Think of the Ganges River in Varanasi in India, where bodies are burned and the ashes are thrown into the sacred Ganges River. In fact, the Ganges River is worshipped as a god, the Ganga. So here again, water is a very powerful symbol in all religions. It means you are born again. Think of a baby inside the mother is surrounded by water. Think of the flood of Noah wiping out humanity. So water is one of those universal symbols of all religions. Now, another very important part as soon as you walk into a Catholic church are along the walls you will see what we call stations of the cross. A church, a mosque, a synagogue, a Buddhist temple, a Hindu temple is more than just a beautiful building. It is a history lesson. Along the walls of a Catholic church there are 14 stations. Okay, this is number 8. And here we see the story of Jesus's arrest, his condemnation, his crucifixion, and his resurrection are portrayed in artwork on the wall. Now, art in churches and mosques and synagogues and everything is not just pretty. It is educational. This is a history lesson. Now, you have to realize in ancient times, most people could not read and write. They couldn't even read the Bible. They couldn't pick up the Quran or the Torah or anything else and read and write. So, history was presented through artwork. And so here we see the most important part of Christian history portrayed in art. So once again, this is part of the power of a house of worship. In a mosque, you will see there is writing around the wall in Arabic. History is being written. In a synagogue, you will see the symbols, the Star of David, Hebrew lettering, other symbols, once again portraying the history. Even holidays, when you go to the Jewish Passover, one of the smallest children is required to ask the oldest male at the Passover dinner, why is this night different from all other nights? And the oldest man then tells the story of the Exodus. So religions preserve and communicate their history. In a Catholic Church, it is in art and statues. In a religious ceremony like the Passover, it is in telling the story again. So every house of worship, every religion is dedicated to preserving its history, presenting its account of the history of its religion, of its major beliefs. Okay, now what we are going to do is we're going to go over here, and now you will get a view of the inside of the church. Now, we are very lucky today because, as you can see, the priest is up there and there's the baptism of a small child. Once again, the child is taken and water is poured over its forehead. Usually the child starts screaming and yelling, but this is washing away original sin. Here again, this is one of the rituals that we have in all religions, celebrating the birth. These are what we call life cycle events. Every religion has a ceremony to welcome you into the community. Every religion has a ceremony to welcome you into adulthood, whether it is the bar mitzvah, the bas mitzvah, the confirmation. Every religion has a marriage ceremony, welcome you into the married state. And every religion has a death ceremony, funeral, burial ceremonies. They're different, but yet they are similar in the sense that all of these major life events are made part of the religion. So when you die, if you are a Catholic, it is assumed you will either go to heaven or to hell. So this is part of the every religion which has some type of life cycle events. Okay, now we're going to go down and we will see our next visit. So here we are now at the front of the church, and this is one of the side altars. At most Catholic churches you'll have three altars, one on the side, which is devoted to Mary. Then you'll have your main altar, which we will see in a second, and then the third altar. Altar simply means a table. Now this is a side altar. Now once again, we see the font here, which is the baptismal font. That's where the baby that we just saw was brought up and put in there, and the priest poured water on its forehead and baptized it. In fact, there's still some water in the bottom. Once again, the importance of water as a universal building block of all religions. Over here, we have holy water, where people can bring a little bottle. They can take some blessed water home with them. And many Catholics believe that it will improve your health, or that if you say a prayer, you can take some water and make the sign of the cross or something. And so, once again, the power of water. Now, this altar is devoted to Mary. Now, Catholic Church has a very powerful place for women. Don't forget, at the time of Jesus, women were basically at home having babies. Judaism until today has women behind a curtain in the synagogue. Mosques, women are separated from the men. But the Catholic Church was the first church that gave women a major place. And so that's why until today we have nuns. We have women who are saints, and women were given an important role. And once again, the role of women in religions is a very, very complicated issue. Now, on the right, we see Joseph and baby Jesus with Mary in the middle. Now, extremely important for every religion is the family. That is why religious groups are opposed to abortion. They are opposed to divorce. They support strong family values because the strong family unit is central to every major world religion. Now, of course, with some religions, you can have more than one wife. Sometimes divorce is tolerated. But in general, the family, a stable family unit, is one of those universal building blocks. And it is portrayed in Catholicism, which we call the Holy Family: Mary, Joseph, and baby Jesus. Once again, stressing the importance of the family as a universal building block, not only of religions, but of society as a whole. Now, another very important universal building block of all religions is this candle. Now, the candle is not lit, but in every church, in every synagogue, you will find candles. Now, why is a candle so important? Well, at the top is a fire. And fire is considered a representation of the sun. Where would human life on earth be if there was no sun? And why do we have Sunday, the day when we venerate this day of the sun? And so fire is extremely important. If you go to Benares, the Hindu sacred city on the Ganges River, they burn the bodies of the dead and throw the ashes into the river, going back to nature. Think of the Jewish Bible, the burning bush. These are all fire symbols. Now, these are not just Jewish and Christian, but every religion. Zoroastrians have their fire temples. The eternal flame in a church, in a synagogue, is very important. So fire is one of these universal symbols found in all religion. Whether it's fire, whether it's water, whether it's family, whether it's birth, whether it's death, all of these major events are incorporated into every world religion. Now, we are moving over here to the main altar. Now, here again, you see the red candle on the right. It is called the eternal flame. In Hebrew, they call it the Ner Tamid, meaning the flame that is always burning. Now, what is the power of this? Well, think, when you go on vacation and you have a nice house out in Long Island or somewhere, very often people will put the house lights on a timer. So at 8 o'clock, automatically, the lights in the living room click on, the television clicks on. At 11 o'clock, a light in the bathroom upstairs and a bedroom clicks on, meaning or giving the message to anybody who wants to break in and rob the house blind, someone is at home, which is basically the message of the eternal flame, the flickering light. Sometimes it's to the side of the altar. Sometimes it's hanging from the ceiling. Here we see other candles, once again stressing the power of the sun as the source of all life. Now, here we see the main altar. At the top, we see saints and angels, and so each of these has its own unique history. Now, in that little box, you see on the altar, the table, there's a little box there with a door, 2 candles on either side. Now, in the Catholic Church, they keep the bread wafers, which Catholics believe were turned into the body and blood of Jesus during the ceremony called the Mass. Now, this brings up another universal building block of all religions, and this is food. Think of the Passover dinner, the Seder, where special foods are eaten. Think of kosher food. Think of halal food for Muslims. Think of vegetarian food for Hindus and Buddhists. Meat and food and slaughtering animals is all part of the religion. Food is a major building block of religion. Now, you'll say for Protestants there's no food. Well, where would we be without Christmas cookies and Easter chocolate? So when a religion doesn't have a major place for a particular universal building block, society finds a place for it. It invents Christmas cookies and all kinds of foods. So in this box is the host, the little bread wafers, which are locked away, which Catholics believe are part of the body of Jesus. Now the saint above there, you can see he's wearing the crown of a bishop and holding the staff of a bishop. That is Saint Adalbert, that's the saint who this church is named after. Now, Catholic churches, don't forget, the word Catholic means universal, worldwide. So if you come here, you see Saint Adalbert, who was the Bishop of Prague in Czechoslovakia and visited the hometown of my father's family, the Boronowski family in Slovakia, and then went up to convert the heathens in Poland and in Russia, and was martyred by the pagans. So every church is universal. Every religion, in fact, claims to have universal validity. Islam claims to be a religion not just for one tribe or one people, but for all of humanity. And so that's why Muslims, like Christians, sending out missionaries to convert people around the world. So this is the main altar. Now, if we turn completely around and look in the other direction, up above the doors where we entered, you see there is an organ. Organ is like a piano, but has big pipes on both sides, which makes beautiful music. Here again, music is a fundamental, universal building block of all religions. whether it is reciting the Quran in the correct way in a mosque, whether it is Jews praying in an Orthodox synagogue, whether it is Hindus praying in Sanskrit, chanting passages from the Gita. Music is one of those universal building blocks. Now, with Catholics, sometimes it's an opera mass with an orchestra, with beautiful music. Sometimes it's just a bunch of people chanting together in unison. So these are another one of the great universal building blocks of all religions. Now, if we look above the altar here, we can see all kinds of angels. Now, most religions have a god, or several gods, or 3 gods, or 1,000,000 gods. It doesn't make any difference. But most religions feel that God is so distant that he needs or she needs helpers. And so most religions have a group of people who are intermediaries between God and humans. The Jewish Bible is filled with angels and archangels and seraphim. The Christian Bible is filled with angels, always a human being with wings who deliver messages from God to humans, can intervene between humans and gods. Even Catholics believe that every individual has his or her guardian angel. And so when we talk about monotheism, one God, well, that's really not quite the case, because there are all kinds of other creatures between God and humans, and angels and seraphim and cherubim and archangels, as well as devils in hell were former angels. So religions create a whole universe of special, interesting creatures. Okay, now, this is called a pulpit. You have those in every house of worship. It's a mosque, a synagogue, a church, a temple. And this is where the reader, the priest, the imam, the rabbi, or someone comes, puts the sacred book and reads sections of it, and then speaks. Now, sacred books are fundamental to almost every major religion, whether it is the Christian Bible, the Jewish Bible, the Quran, the Gita, or the Book of Mormon, not the Broadway show, but the actual Book of Mormon, the collected writings of someone like the Reverend Moon. It is put in a book form. Now, this is fundamental to all modern religions. Now, as I mentioned earlier, when these Gothic churches were being built in the Middle Ages, and for thousands of years, very few people could read. So that if you were a Catholic priest in the Middle Ages and you could read Latin or Greek, it gave you great power because you had access to the teachings in the Holy Book. So a book is one of those universal building blocks of religion, which today everybody can have a copy of the Bible translated into every possible language. But for thousands of years, reading and writing was a skill, an art, a gift that was reserved for a very few people of the clergy. Now, over here we have another central feature of Christian churches, and this is the altar. An altar is basically a table, and you always have the focus of something, whether it is the bema in a synagogue where the Torah scrolls are held, whether it is facing the city of Mecca, the sacred city of Muslims, there's always a central focus. Now remember when we came in the door, I was counting the steps. Here again we have 2 steps up to the altar. There's another step up to a area, and then 3 more steps going up to the original main altar. So once again, we see the architecture of the building is constantly moving upward. The people are here in the pews. The priests and the other workers of the church can go up to a higher level, and it is a constant raising in elevation. Once again, going up to the top of the mountain. So, once again, we are leaving the sanctuary, the candle, the pulpit, the tables, all of the beautiful artwork, stained glass windows with depictions of St. Peter and St. Paul, saints and the angels. And we're going to walk back toward the main entrance. So this is the central aisle. As you can see, we are in lockdown. Don't forget, this is August 2020, and as you can see, every other pew is blocked off so that the people won't come into contact with each other and spread the virus. So this, once again, is an example of what I call the universal building blocks of religion. Now, there are many, many other building blocks I could have spoken about. For example, clothing. I mean, Jews wear the yarmulke, Muslims cover their head, women wear the veil. Catholic priests wear vestments, we call them, sacred garments. Buddhist monks wear the orange robes. Clothing separates you from other people. You're not an ordinary person like me in blue jeans and a shirt. You're not somebody in a tank top and shorts or just an ordinary dress. Religious leaders are generally marked by some distinctive form of clothing to show that the clergy, the religious leaders, are not just somebody else, but they have a special role. Now, in many religions, such as a Catholic religion, we believe that the priest has the power to forgive sin, the power to marry people, the power to bless people. Other religions say that a religious leader, such as a rabbi, is a highly educated person who intellectually understands more about the religion than the average person. But here again, that's another fundamental universal building block of religion. There are certain select leaders who have a certain knowledge or a certain power. So I could really go on all day talking about these universal building blocks of religion. There are loads of them. Take one, hair. I don't have any hair, but very often a woman, Jewish woman, when she gets married, she covers her hair. Muslim men wear beards. Many monks in Christian monasteries wear beards, but they cut the top of their hair. My aunt, who was a Catholic nun, had her hair shaved like me, and she wore a veil. So here again, who would have ever thought that hair was one of these universal building blocks of religion? In fact, when we think of a wise old man, we think of a long white beard. And so this is another element of world religions. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not, sometimes it comes back. But these are the universal language of all religion. Now, I was very lucky because I was raised Catholic, so everything we've seen today is part of my childhood. But understanding all of these building blocks really equipped me to be able to understand almost any world religion. So when I lived for 5 years in Jerusalem, I was perfectly comfortable in a synagogue or a mosque. When I was in South Asia, I was perfectly comfortable in a Buddhist monastery or a Hindu temple. When I was in Africa, when a woman came up and gave me a grigri, which is a magic amulet that I would wear, and she guaranteed me that if I wore this within 3 weeks, I would be married. Needless to say, I didn't put it on and wear it for 3 weeks, and I've remained single until now. But I understood where she was coming from. She had blessed this little potion. And so, just like Catholics wear medals, Orthodox Jews wear strings on their t-shirt, Muslims have their own religious garb and their own magic potions and things. This is a universal language of all religions. So, to conclude, if you have really followed this closely, and you are kidnapped tomorrow, and you are taken to Mars, you can do really good research on the religion of the people of Mars. You just look for the universal building blocks of religion, some of which I've given you today, and you will understand their religion. It won't be strange, it won't be exotic, it won't be weird or frightening, because it is simply another expression, another combination of these wonderful building blocks. So once again, I will say thank you. If you do have any questions, I have a very simple email address. You can write Ron Brown Media, Brown, B-R-O-W-N, Ron Brown Media @gmail.com. I love to get feedback from these various programs and welcome comments, suggestions, criticisms, whatnot, and I look forward to hearing from you. So once again, thank you very, very much, everybody, and I hope to see you sometime in the future on another one of these exciting YouTube videos. Thank you very much.